morning and welcome to our live talk program. This is Lloyd Gov here, your host on Revive Reform Radio, doing our live talk program covering this morning religion. And today my topic is a church without a pope, a country without a king, core features, removal of tyrants. Welcome, let us pray. Our Father, who art in heaven, I thank you for your word in this day. I pray the Lord that you may bless us and be with us as we study together. And thank you for those that are here. And may your grace go with us for Christ's sake. Amen. So I'm looking at this topic here, which is to close off the thought that I had this week, which is a church without a pope and a country without a king. This is a core feature of America, and it is the removal of tyrants. And so this is continuing my theme, which, as I say, I've been doing this week, which is a fascinating concept. And it's a concept that, for the most part, except for Israel, which I'll read to you in a few minutes, did not exist in the world. This idea here that you could run a country without a pope and without a king, an absolute monarch. If you read the definition of what the papacy, the leader of the papacy or the Catholic Church is, it would be an absolute monarch. He has absolute reign and still have absolute reign over the Vatican. And then when you think about a king, whether it be in Egypt, in Media Persia, Babylon, Greece, Rome, it is absolute monarchs. The king has the control of the laws of the land, and the king speaks that way. And now when you come to America, you have something totally different. Here's a country that is run by neither a pope, no absolute monarch in the church, and no absolute monarch in the country, the political. So a Protestant form of government where the people have a voice of who's the leaders and what's the laws that are passed. That's why normally in America you do polls, and you poll the people and you ask them, what do you think about this law or that law? And then the government is supposed to respond to the people. So that's what America is and has been, and that's been the influence of America for the last 240-something years as it introduced this concept to the world, and the world switched. So this is important. So before I even go, again, I'll go back to my main theme, and then I'm going to go to my main text, because I want to introduce this thought to you, and I want to break it down in piece. Why is this so important? Because somebody could say, well, how do we know this is talking about America in Revelation 13:11 onwards? Because it is the country that basically changed the face of the globe with this concept that you could have these two ideas. Now, the first idea came out of Europe first. The Protestants had this idea under Luther, primarily starting that you could have a church that has no pope. And there goes the Lutheran Church and other churches that spawned during the Dark Ages. And then in America, after they threw off the king of Britain, then you have now a country that did not have a king, but had a president. So, there's countries that had play with this idea. And I'm going to show you in the Bible that the Israel was run not by a king. So the concept is not a fresh concept, so to speak, but this is the concept that we've lived under in the world for the last 200 and something years. And this would be primarily because of America. So it's important to note. So somebody could say, hey, how again because this is the reality, and I'll show you in a second. So my theme has been, before I'll get back to that, so I just wanted to introduce a thought, and I'm going to show you in Revelation 13 how the Bible does not include in any of the horns on the two heads, two horns on the head of America as having a crown. So in my theme has been, if you view, understand, and accept America as the Bible describes it, with its contradictions, then you will view its history and current with clarity. So, there's many things that people talk about. What makes you a faithful American, a patriot? And I realize I'm thinking most people don't understand the core feature of America, what America is. So I'm going to introduce that to you. I'm going to show you today, and then you be the judge if I'm calling it right. So my understanding of America is these two core features, and that's how the Bible describes it, that what makes America great is these two core features. So notice here, if you understand America and what it really is, its history, the past, and I would say now its core feature, you will be able to understand its future with the same clarity. because America stopped being a country if it takes away these two core features, because that's how God sees America. Now, notice here, it is what it is. Like humans, we all have our sinners and with flaws. We celebrate Mother's Day, Father's Day, birthday, anniversaries, knowing well and good these flaws exist in the people that we celebrate. So when we celebrate Uncle Sam, we're celebrating him because we understand what Uncle Sam is about, and is what is good about Uncle Sam, and then the bad things Uncle Sam do. So we view life similarly. In Matthew chapter 10, verse 16, it says here, "Behold, I send you forth as sheep in the midst of wolves. Be therefore wise as serpents and harmless as doves." So, any country you live in, including the United States, one must understand what we're dealing with, and that this is not a perfect country. It has its flaws and it has its good. And I would say the two good part of it that it has is a government that does not have a king. If the king does not respond to the people, we still have a right to vote out the president. He's not a king. He's not an absolute monarch. If the laws of the lands are wrong, we can protest them to the Supreme Court and in the street. This would not be the same when you have an absolute monarch. And it's the same thing in the church. You have a right to protest what the church is doing because the church doesn't have an absolute monarch. But I'm going to deal with those two things and show you that there's something happening that is very important for you to know here. So notice here in Matthew chapter 5, Philippians 12, Philippians 2, verse 15. And it says here, "That ye may be blameless and harmless, sons of God, without rebuke, in the midst of a crooked and perverse nation, among whom you shine as light in the world." All right, so now I'm going to go now to the two comparisons I want to show you. So when we understand that we came from Europe, so Western Europe, the seven kingdoms of Western Europe, how they were run by absolute monarchs. They had seven heads, and on each of those heads, they have seven kingdoms, seven countries. Those seven countries have seven kingdoms, and these kingdoms were run by a head, the head of state. The head of state was a king, he had a crown. Italy just so happened, which is the main kingdom in Western Europe for the last 2,000 something years, for 1,260 years of those existence of Western Europe, they had a person that was absolute monarch in the church and in the state. Before it was the absolute monarch for the state. But as the Christian church developed, then the absolute monarch of the state turned over the power of the state and gave its seat and greater authority to the church leader. So imagine now you went to church and the church leader is also the one that run the country. That was what Europe was under. So the primary influencer and control of Western Europe went from the papacy, or the Caesars, who run all of Western Europe, 10 tribes, and after they became 7 tribes, then the papacy took over, and he started to run it, and he run it with his 6 other brethren that were heads of state, which are kings. So that's the history. It's uncontrovertible because that's just the fact of the history of Europe. So Britain now wouldn't have religious political power leading it per se. It would have a king, but that king would respond to the king in Italy. Italy was the primary brother or the Roman Empire. Rome ruled the world still, just via the church. So when you look at this now, you find that was a structure. I'm going to read it in a second. I want to tell you, and then you read, and then you take note, and then you tell me what you think. So then when we come to America now is a child or the daughter of Europe. By the time we come to America, and by the time we come to 1776, the American leaders who were Protestant, because there were 13 colonies, 13 churches, who had 13 colonies, they now decided that they wanted Britain to leave and to make a strong union, because there were these different churches that had 13 colonies. They decided that they was going to do a different system, a Republican government, and a Republican government that had a king, so to speak, but George Washington would be a king. So there's a certain point where George Washington stepped down from leadership. And this is key to everything I'm going to say, because when George Washington came to power, he was a general, and he was the absolute monarch, so to speak. He could have been. But at a certain point, George Washington decided that he's not going to keep running for office and just run until he dies. Now, this is key to what's going on in the society. So some of what I'm talking about here, most of what I'm going to talk about here is really current events, right? I could have done it yesterday. So George Washington stepped down, right? He's not going to be a perpetual king because then he would replace, I think it was King George or whatever the king was in England at the time. So this is key to our understanding. George Washington stepped down. There's a certain point where the clock has struck a certain number and you need to step down. Now we're noticing this is this key feature in America that it seemed to be they're toying with. And I'm going to talk about that. This is why I'm here. Because I want to show you the contradiction. And we're developing a contradiction in the country. In both the church, because remember today we're talking about religion, and in the state, you can see it in both avenues, aspect. We have in the monarchs running our country. But this is not what America is about. I'll get into it in a second. So notice here now. So I explained that to you. So there's more detail I can go into. And I'm sure you probably know more detail about this than myself when it comes on to how America came to be. First, Protestants came to America, 13 colonies, 13 Protestant churches or groups. And then they fought off the British, and then they decided no more king. And they already, but they decided no pope because there's just church leaders. And the two horns formed in 1776 on the beast. But the beast spake like a dragon. So notice here. In Revelation 13 verse 1, we read now about Western Europe under the papacy. And I stood upon the sand of the sea, and I saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads, because 3 of the heads were murdered. So 538 BC, 538 BC, kingdom comes up. He has 7 heads of state. And he had 10 horns because 3 were genocided. But the geographical locations were still there. 10 horns. Horn represent a power in Bible prophecy. I'm not doing a study fully to explain that, but you can find it in the Bible. And upon his horns were 10 crowns. Now here you see a key feature, because all the horns has crowns. So crown represent like royalty, king, all right? And upon his head the name blasphemy, very blasphemous, speak against God. Speak all kind of manner of rubbish against God. All right. Now we see verse 11 now. So we go Revelation chapter 13 verse 1. Now we read Revelation chapter 13 verse 11. Notice we're going to see something missing in the description of the next beast that comes up. He says, I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth. So this earth doesn't come out, this beast doesn't come out of the sea. It comes up out of the earth. We understand this is the difference between America at the time, at the rise of the United States of America, and the rise of the papacy. Papacy came out of the era. Sea in the Bible represent a place with many people. The earth represents a place that is not many people. So the beast comes up out of the earth. And he had 2 horns. So this beast now doesn't have 7 horns. He has 2. We normally say it's the 2 powers in America, the church and the state, the Republican government. And he spake as a dragon. So notice you see there's no crown. The Bible doesn't mention a crown in this next beast. So somebody could say, throughout history, except one text I'm going to read to you in the end, which is Israel. Israel was a state that for a period of time it was run, but it had no king. Other than Israel, and probably a few states here and there, I'm sure you can probably find a tribe, an island somewhere that they had no king. But for the most part, everywhere you go, there's a tribal, the chief, the king, whoever had the crown. Even in the Americas, which was separated from Western Europe, separated from Asia, they had king. Even in Africa, wherever you go, this concept here of an absolute monarch, and he controls the people, and he, direct war, stuff like that. you had this concept of a crown on the head of the state. Now, here we have in America, you have this very unique feature that comes about where the Bible tells you that there's a power that's going to rise. The Bible described from Daniel and Revelation. There's and before it was Egypt, then Israel, then Babylon, Media, Persia, Greece, Rome, and then Rome divided in 10, then Rome in 7, and then we believe America is the next kingdom and the last global great power to be on the face of the earth. But it says America rises, and it rises with no crown or that beast. If it, just in case somebody would say, okay, like what if you, I don't believe it's America. Is some other kingdom going to come up? Okay, so if you scan the world up until 1776, you would find that kingdoms are ruled by kings. Kings have a crown. But here the Bible describes that there's going to be a beast separate from all of the beasts upon the face of the planet, great global powers, that does not have a king. Right? Even under Israel, Solomon became the king and he became the global dominant leader. Kings would come to him to ask him opinion and give him gifts. He was the global kingdom that money flowed to. America now is that kingdom. From 1776, the history states, or the opinion people state, on that by 1890, America was a great power. Okay. So what happened after the start of America? Just in case you didn't link it. Even this is interesting about the Bible. You could say, okay, Lord, I don't believe that. But you can't deny history. You can't deny reality. The reality is, and somebody could say, Lord, it's just a big coincidence. Could be. But the reality is, after Europe, which is clearly defined by how many Bible historians, even Luther himself believed that the man of sin was the papacy. So many Bible scholars have concluded that Western Europe is described in the Bible. So when you come now to what was the kingdom that came after Western Europe, that's a global dominant kingdom. Well, it just so happened to be America. It just so happened America has two powers in it that dominates the country and define the country. Even we fight now about abortion, that's not the government per se, it's the church that wants to ban abortion. Prayer in school, Bible in school. Who's fighting about that? It's the church. That's the power in the country. But anyhow, so two kings, don't want to argue with myself here, but two kings, two leaders, but none is a pope and none is a king. But the country runs itself. Now, what is the country? What defines America? Is a government by the people, for the people. So the laws of the land is an opinion or expression of the people. That's been the government, whether the laws of the land are great or not. And so it's a country that right into the Constitution and in the amendments, slavery, Jim Crow, all these things, laws of the land, war and drugs, laws of the land. What was the result of those laws? So now, these are key features. I read it again, and then you could do your mental battle with that. That's what I'm putting out there. Revelation 13, verse 11 again. I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth. And he had two horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon. But we find no crowns on none of the horns. No crowns. Now later it says he exercised all the power of the first beast. So how can a kingdom that has no pope, no crown, no crowns, exercise all the power? When the power that we're talking about is this kingly authority to basically not only make laws and stuff like that, but to give life or take life and to override the will of the people. The word tyrant, because as my topic is a church without a pope, a country without a king, is the core feature of America. And America core feature is removal of tyrants. So before I get to that, I would need to read to you what is a tyrant. The word tyrant, Tyrant, just in case I'm not pronouncing it right, kind of a little bit hoarse here. It's an absolute ruler, unstrained by law or constitution. So if you search Google, I'm just pulling from Google here, you'll find dictionary.com and various different places will give you the definition of tyrant.
So I pulled two of them. There's two, I think, clarify where I'm going. Notice here, an absolute ruler. So you would say a king or a pope controls the place and they make the law. And laws does not restrain them. So an absolute ruler unrestrained by law. So I gave you two definitions because it might not fit in every situation. Or constitution. So you could look at a certain country, like you look at Israel. Israel is a nation that they would say is a democratic nation, but it's not true in the fullest sense. Because Israel is not a government by the people or for the people. Because half the people in Israel, the geographical land mass, are Palestinian. So they can't have a constitution because to have a constitution, that would mean you'd have to give the people who live in the area rights, right? So you couldn't say they're a democratical country in the sense that there's people who can't vote in the election and they don't have no proper constitution. So you could have a colony, like Jamaica is a colony and they don't have a constitution because the heads of state does not run the government for the people, he run it for Britain. The true heads of state is the governor general. So the prime minister is just a manager for Britain. And it's really, if you ask me, it's just a mess because you don't really have self-determination. But somebody will say, what are you talking about? they vote. Yeah, they vote. It's a clown show. It's not the true thing. It's a probably not a clown show to the fullest sense, but it's a mess because you can't have self-determination. But I thought we were supposed to have self-determination. Yeah, because the only true country that I really believe in the absolute sense is free is America. America really is free because it's the government that's supposed to be for the people and by the people. But then you could challenge me on that and say, Lloyd, but for probably over 100 years of American existence, Black America never had the constitutional right. Sure, yeah, but that's the contradiction of America, because there were people living in the United States similar or worse than the Palestinians. They did not have constitutional rights. So this is where the government, there's this contradiction with America, because it's supposed to be a government for the people by the people, but for a long time, primarily blacks were not human beings or full human beings. And then there's a certain point where they became free, but they didn't have the full constitutional rights, no civil rights. And then women, including white women, did not have constitutional rights in the fullest sense. So the contradiction of the country was there. The laws speak like Satan because the laws contradict itself. Forked tongue in the proper sense. It's say one thing, but they do another. So now, notice here, a tyrant is unrestrained by law or constitution, unrestrained. So somebody will say, well, it was unrestrained by constitution in the sense of black people. And you can find the same thing. It's tyranny. Notice here, any person, also a tyrant is any person in a position of authority who exercise power oppressively or despotically. So again, you'll find that for most part, for the 248 years of America up until 1964 properly, legally, on paper, it was a despotism for and tyranny and oppression for blacks and to a certain degree for women. Does I get that? So this would be speaking of as dragon. That's just the facts. This is the history of America. So you fulfill. So when you start talking about the Bible and what the Bible says, and you just deal with it properly, you look at what the Bible says, and you look at America, you say, wow, it fit like a glove. And you know, they say if the glove don't fit, you must acquit. But the glove fit. And you look at the child, you say, that child is yours. Yeah, you're the father. So you watch the Bible and you look at it, you say, that's very fascinating, because somebody could say, well, no, if you're a white man, the government from 1778 was not a despotic institution. And I would not disagree. But that's the point. But there's a history that goes with it. And you say, okay, it is the history, right? So this is beautiful. Now, why is this have to do with the bigger issue to me? I don't want to forget this. I want this lost on you. Why does have to do with religion? Because the text itself speaks to the supernatural power of the Bible that is hard to understand. It baffles the mind. It blows away any argument about evolution. You know, if somebody tell me, Lloyd, what about the arguments for evolution? I just say Revelation 13, verse 1, Revelation 13, verse 11. You can't explain this. It blows the mind. It was written, according to scientists, according to people who study history, this was written over 2,000 years ago. So if you conclude that this was written over 2,000 years ago, how did he write this? Is cryptic. And then if you read Daniel 11, and it's been certified by historian that Daniel chapter 2 was written thousands of years ago. How could he get it right? He lays out the history of the world in one chapter. Brilliant. But beyond brilliant, supernatural. So that's what religion does. So just in case you miss why I'm here, why I think this is religious, because this is supernatural. I can't wrap my mind about this. You look at every argument I'm going to make for you the next few minutes, and you will see that it blows the mind. So remember, the Bible says in verse 2 that he will exercise. America has been exercising all the power and getting closer and closer to repudiate every single article of the Constitution and go back to European style of leadership before 1778. So I want to show you, I'm going to focus all of my attention now on this concept, a church without a pope and a country without a king. This removal of tyrants. Can you see this in America? This concept here that America is not for leaders when it comes on to tyranny, when it comes on to so forth. No pope, no king. So since America came to being, what has happened? The world has been almost forced to transform to this concept of democracy, a government by the people and for the people. A government where there is no king, a church where there is no pope. This has been the case. A representative form of government, a government where the people can vote their leaders, the people can have a say on the laws that govern them. The people can even have a say on how the police operate. The police does not. Somebody say, oh, the police is there to enforce. The police enforce the laws of the society. The planning boards, the mayor, the governor, anything financial is the government by the people. And I agree with that. Notice here, a Protestant government that threw off the Pope and the British King. So we can see that check that box. The United States is that government. There's no question about that in my mind. And after America formed, America started influencing other countries that they need to throw off their country's monarch, their country's tribal leader, their country's chief, their country, whatever you want to call them. Throw them off. And that's been our existence for the last how many 100 years? All right. The core meaning of our feature of patriotism. So yesterday, the society celebrated patriotism, love for country. But I know if you go to the average person and you ask them secular, what is unique about your country? Most Americans don't know this, and most people don't understand this. Because remember, most Americans have now left the church, and there's a disconnect with history. Now, I could be wrong, so don't take it absolute. As I say, I didn't do. I probably should go look up a research. You know, when I finish, I'm gonna look up a research, just in case somebody had polled somebody. It's just my assumption. So I make that be clear. I'm not dogmatic on that statement. So a core feature and meaning of American patriotism is love for country. You say patriotism is love for country. But I think now is that I make an assumption here that if I go to Congress and Senate and I explain to them what they're there for, probably a lot of them not familiar with this concept, that their purpose, they do it. I don't know how much they rationalize it, But most people don't understand this concept that the government is supposed to be run where we say it. I know somebody's a lawyer, but people say it all the time: a government for the people and by the people. Sure. Yeah, I'm with you. But a core feature of America, to be faithful to America, is this concept, though, riveted in this concept, this idea that you don't want a king that making laws and rules for you or government officials and they didn't consult the population. And somebody say, yes, they do, Lloyd. Yeah, probably. You can argue with me. That's just my opinion. So I'm not dogmatic on arguing against this. If you believe that's what it is, you believe. Now, my opinion is simply this. I'm emphasizing my opinion, Lloyd's opinion here, from my observation, that this concept is being lost in the church. And you hear me out as I roll through some of my arguments, and I'm going to go back to some text. That this core feature is being lost in America. This idea that what America is as a core is not the flag, but is what the flag represents. It's not the Constitution per se, it's what the Constitution represents. And to sum it up, my understanding of what the Constitution, what the flag, and what all this experiment called America is and being is a government without a pope. Sorry, a government without a king and a church without a pope. All right? I'll flesh it out a little bit more. As America been going around the world removing dictators and telling people that you must vote, that the vote is the right. Like years ago, America went to Haiti and it removed, I think Papa Doc, and then his son became Baby Doc. It's this concept here that there is a tyrant or what you call it, a dictator is running the country. And America removed Papa Doc and Baby Doc. I could remember that as a child. The name seemed interesting. Baby Doc, Papa Doc, Baby Doc. So I remembered. I didn't have to look that one up. Has America been going around the world doing this? But somebody could say, Lord, why does America go around the world and keep saying they need to remove dictators? Because America, as I say, key feature is a government without a pope, without a king, and a church without a pope. The people need to have a say on the laws of the land. And you can't have this concept here that, like what happened in North Korea. North Korea is run by his father. And then after North Korea was run by his father, then you have this idea now that the son is running. And you say that's a dictatorship. He decides the laws of the land. The people are not consulted on the laws of the land. So America say, we are against him. America was against communism. America against one-party rule, although it does business with China, which is kind of make no sense, but there you have it. America was against Vietnam. America was against Cuba because Fidel Castro became the dictator, the absolute monarch, so to speak. Country was not run by opinion of the people, by polls, because he always run. And then you have now, I think, Vladimir Putin has been in office now, I think, 3 times. George Washington would not agree with that. America, back in the 1960s, or no, somewhere there, no, before that, America had gone to where you don't have more than 2 terms, term limit. But yet, people have been questioning, okay, Lord, you say America doesn't have term limits, but what about the Supreme Court? Well, there you go. The Supreme Court don't have term limits. So you could have, like what's been going on now with one of the, what you call it, the leaders, the kings over there in the Supreme Court. They're just taking bribes and stuff like that. But I thought we were supposed to be a government where there's no king. People can remove leaders, but you have absolute leaders in the Supreme Court. What is that all about? So notice here a core feature meaning of America. And America now, as to demonstrate this idea, is not only internally America say, we don't believe in dictators. America believe that the history of America has been that they go around the world and they say, you shouldn't have a dictator also, and we will overthrow your dictator assassinate him, do whatever we can, create a war to get rid of the dictator. This is America. But this is a core feature of America that one must understand. And you can see this in the behavior of America. Saddam Hussein, Syria, they almost got rid of the Syrian leader, but the Russians came in and stopped it. They tried to they got rid of Libya. So I'm talking about in the recent history. They got rid of, well, they overthrow, I can't remember his name. The person was head of Egypt, and they put in Assisi, which is a general, which is interesting, which to me, this kind of snaky bit business. A general became the head. They tried to overthrow the leader in Egypt, that failed. Afghanistan had the Taliban. Now the Taliban is back in power. The Taliban, think about the Taliban, they something else. And they said, do business with us and recognize us as a government, but just ignore the draconian, I think they use harsh laws that we pass against women, right? But America, I don't know if America is going to do business with them, but that's fascinating. They actually come out and admit it that I can't remember the word they use, but they just say ignore the woman part, you know. Very fascinating. So America has been removing dictator. Again, I don't know. You can't argue with that, but that's a key feature of America. Now, this is the purpose of the last two generations. So if you notice now, the last two generations in America, this has been their purpose. I almost want to say their existence. So we're talking about, I'm just using his name for, using his namesake, just to time what I'm talking about. So if you go back and look at the generation that has been so focused on removing dictators, it would be like the baby boomer generation. Just let's put it that way. It could be the little generation before them and then after them. This current generation, I don't know if they're too into that, but kind of. So the generation that I think as I've been observing, trying to understand this concept, going around removing dictators, is the generation before them. Now I don't know how it works or how it's working. Like when they remove Gaddafi, is Libya doing better? When they're doing the development and the people experience of removing Baby Doc and Papa Doc, and then America now have been constantly trying to install puppet governments in Haiti because of the Monroe Doctrine, America has to control the Western Hemisphere. Are the Haitians people doing better because they have no dictator anymore? Right? So this is what they've been doing. So it's not so much per se America, but I would say it's the generation that is dying off now, the baby boomers. That's been their whole purpose, from 25 years or so, or probably in the 80s. They've been trying to remove dictators and get rid of communism, and it's been a purpose, I think, for all my life. So this purpose, as the last two generations, primarily baby boomers, has been their focal point. Their whole existence is to remove dictator, because you say the core feature of America is a leader but has no crown, and then a church with no crown. But notice now, this is where I twist. I depart in this discussion. We go back to Revelation chapter 13, verse 11. The question I want to ask you, this is a discussion I'm having with you, by being kingmakers globally and staying into office until they die, has the baby boomers is going against America and its core principles? And it probably is one of the most unpatriotic thing, an unchristian thing they've been doing. Are they reversing this concept of a government without a king that has a crown and a church without a pope, and have become little popes and kings and queens themselves? Are we going against this? This is important to note, because remember, the core features of America, according to the Bible, will be overturned, and we'll go back to a European style of leadership in the country that was in existence before 1776. So can you see in the baby boomer generation that they're switching slowly to this concept of holding on to power until they die and becoming little kings and little popes in the church and in the world. If anything I say to you here, this is my switch. This is what I want you to think about. Think about this. Can you see this happening in the society? That there are people that has been in power almost, literally, since I've been born. And they go and die in office. And they decide not just locally the laws of the country, they don't respond to the population. And they decide even globally who leads. So the most fascinating country to watch is Haiti. Because when you look at Haiti, on the island of Hispaniola, next to Dominican Republic, you find this thing played out that from being a child to now, America's decided, the American baby boomers have decided who leads Haiti and who they like, who they don't like. And if the leader they don't want, they remove them. Or somebody could say they're removing a dictator. I get you, but hear me out. At the end of the day, they have decided if you have it doesn't matter if the people are doing good or bad. It's just the dictator got to go. Dictator go. All right, America decide. America say, okay, you're going to vote for your next leader, but he's one of our boys. If that leader they don't like, they say, well, assassinate him, or he just got assassinated. Since I don't have no evidence, who assassinated him? So let's go with that. The leader got assassinated, and that's my honest truth. I don't really know who assassinated these people. So the leader get assassinated, or America sending the special forces and literally remove. Now that I know, because that's the history. Literally say, we don't like him, we America, not the people. And they literally assassinate, the leader get assassinated, so that I don't know who has pulled the trigger and who paid that person. Or the leader they're sending the American Special Force and in an independent country that was once a slave colony of France. They're sending the special forces, storm the country, grab the leader, and put the leader in exile because they don't like the leader. But remember, the core feature of America is a government by the people, for the people. A church that responds to the people and ministers for the people. So if I go now and I look at the baby boomers and I say, wait a minute, this is speaking like a dragon. Because the core feature of America is people need to choose their leader. And the leaders need to respond. There's no way you can look at what has happened to Haiti for the last 25 years and conclude that the Constitution is not being gone against and the American leaders are not in rebellion and not moving us back to Europe, back to the papacy. Because it's an image of the beast. That means when you look at America and you look at Western European leadership under the papacy and the 6 other heads of Western Europe, America is slowly start to reflect them because that's what the image is. Now, what I'm saying here, think about it. Because the history of Haiti can't be controverted. The last leader was assassinated. The leader before was kidnapped by, I think it's I can't remember the branch of the special forces. How could that be? And the world sit back and watch. But you have to look and say, wait a minute, isn't that in Revelation 13? Whatever country is described will go against its core principle. Because to go against your core principle, you would have to say, what is the core principle? And I would say the quickest way I can describe America is a government for the people, by the people, or a country that the two powers in it don't have a pope and don't have a king. But yet the king decide that he's going to send on the military. And when he can't get his way, the king decide, well, I'm going to use the Kenyans. I'm going to send them there. But the country cannot do self-determination. Unless you're just really a hypocrite, you cannot be honest with yourself and say a country like Jamaica and stuff has self-determination. The only country, quote unquote, that has self-determination in the Caribbean, literally, is Cuba. And it is on embargo. But this is a repudiation of the Constitution. Notice here now, Are they reversing? Now, this is the big thing for me, this concept here that I've been watching, because I said this is more current events. But quickly, I'm going to get to my main text because I want to show you the Bible. Is America going backwards to Europe by having this concept where the, the old people in the country are dying in office and in church leadership? Have we come to a point that we're seeing people who are literally so old that it spins your head and yet they will not step down? Notice here, is managing every institution or church from a nursing home moving us away from a government for the people and by the people to a government by just those who are about to kick the bucket, or the kick the bucket dictators that won't retire? Where you have a person could be in political office and controlling a country for 50 years. You could born when they went into office, get married, finish school, get married, have a child, and now have a grandchild, and that person is still in office. Now, in Ezekiel chapter 4, verse 13, it states, better is a poor and a wise child than an old and foolish king who will not be admonished. Are we seeing displayed in front of us people who are so old and even going into dementia, and you cannot convince them that they need to step down and step out of the thing, out of the work, the job, and give it to somebody younger, somebody with some uncrippled energy who might lead the church or the country in the right direction? Are we seeing people in the church staying into leadership for 2 decades and they're way past retirement, going through dementia? Have you ever had a pastor? I had, who was literally way past past 70 and going through dementia, and is my pastor. I literally had a pastor like that. But what I saw then, I didn't realize it was going to become the feature, a key feature in America. And now I'm realizing, whoa, it's a key feature of America. It's not a government by the people for the people. It's a government that has been run from a nursing home. And I literally had that. I think I had somebody I knew that had a pastor that was, had to wear Depends. I think he had to wear Depends or something like that. Right? How did we get to that here? Because that's what despotism is to me. You have these old people in office and they go die in office and they're not running the country because they don't care about all these people dying. You show me the top 3 leaders in the church, and have you ever heard them talk about drugs? People dying of drugs. I'm gonna deal with this next week. People dying of drugs, people dying of suicide. They don't talk about. They don't care because they're old. Then that's your problem. Their only intention is they're going to stay in office and die in office. You show me something that is not more current events than this in America right now. People, literally, I was reading an article about one of the Supreme Court justices that he wants to retire, but he can't retire because he's waiting for Donald Trump to come back into office so that he can name his replacement. This is what's going on. And you can't get rid of them because, I'll read it again, better is a poor and a wise child than an old and foolish king who will not be admonished. You can't talk to them. So is it freedom to attack and embargo, especially if you were once a colony of Western Europe or a slave state? Is this what's going on in Haiti? Haiti cannot, if you can show me where America has allowed the baby boomers, the same people who are running the country from a nursing home, if they have allowed the country of Haiti to have self-determination, this is the biggest hypocrisy I've ever seen. And this is a country that I know they're upset with because in 1700s, Haiti was the only slave state that broke loose from European tyranny. And I think they have it up against them from that time. They have not let that go because they contradicted the whole concept of European supremacy and white supremacy. But Haiti has not been allowed. It is one of the biggest sins of America to self-determine It goes against the Constitution. Just like the blacks in America for years could not self-determine, Haiti will never be as long as America and the baby boomers are doing what they do, which is speaking like Satan. So notice here, we have a country that is being run from a geriatric ward, and you cannot admonish people. And you have a church, because that's what our church is. Our church is run by people who I think they're going senile. But you can talk to them, you can't talk nothing to them. And the church is losing its footing, losing its white members. And the leaders who are white, they decide they're not stepping down because they're going to die in office. And you're going to tell me that says it's a government by the people and for the people? This is against America and the Constitution. Notice here, Matthew chapter 20, verse 25 through 28. But Jesus called them unto him and said, Ye know that the princes of the Gentiles exercise dominion over them, and they that are great exercise authority over them. Means it's not a government by the people for the people, it's a government by the authority. Whoever in power, the king. We have little kings and little popes running the church. But it shall not be so among you. But whosoever will be great among you, let him be your ministers. So that's where after America, you have people going to the government leadership and they call themselves ministers. They're there to work for the people. Build roads, take care of education, security, whatever. Now they're little kings attacking people all over the country. And people they think that's patriotism. No, it's patriotism is almost 100% attributed to military. It's not attributed to a government by the people for the people. But that's not true patriotism. Patriotism was you do it for the people. The military serves the people. That's why George Washington said you need to have a civilian government. Most people fully don't not. They might know it, but they don't understand fully why. Because the government's supposed to be for the people, not for the military. But today, they say the government is controlled by the military-industrial complex. Do you believe that? And whosoever will be chief among you, let him be your servant. That's why I'm here. Even as the Son of Man came not to be ministered unto, but to minister, to give his life as a ransom for many. That's why we follow Jesus. That's why when you read now Revelation 13, verse 11, it says that he had two horns like a lamb, but spoke as a dragon. Why is the horns are like a lamb? Because Christ's leadership model was you serve the people. The government leadership model is supposed to be that the people is being served, is not there for the king. That's why it's two horns like a lamb. But if you flip that model and you start having, as I say, a government by people who have been there since I've been a child, then you flip the model and now you have little kings and you serve them, they don't serve you. They tell you that we're going to put the country in debt, billions of dollars in debt, to fight a war that's foolish. What is Israel about? That's a foolish war. Israel is trying to create a utopia. And we know this. And yet we follow Jesus, and Jesus says, not, you're going to be overthrown. And yet in rebellion, we're trying to create a utopia. We're trying to create a promised land. And it's not going to happen because the Bible tells us it's not going to happen. As I said, they could cry blood. It's not going to happen because God will not allow it. God got rid of them out of there. They will not get back the Temple Mount. And that's what I've been preaching for over a decade. It ain't not happen. And they're in trouble over there anyhow. 1 Samuel 8, verse 1 through 22. We close off with this. I have to get back to this next week by God's grace, because I want to show you how terrible this problem is, where we have a church being run for decades by the same people. How can that be? This is rebellion. So you say, Lord, I thought we were talking about religion. I'm talking about religion because this is the church really I'm talking about. Our church is taken over by, as I said, people are going to die in office. There's no difference between the Senate, the executive branch, the judicial branch, and the church. The church are being run by people who've been in there for decades, and they're going to die in there. Notice here, because they refuse to give up leadership. 1 Samuel chapter 8, verse 1 through 21 says, and it came to pass when Samuel was old. When Samuel was what? Old. He couldn't find a leader to replace him. Anyhow. And he made his sons judge over Israel. Now, the name of the firstborn was Joel, and the second was Abiah. And his sons walked not in the way of, in his ways, but turned aside after lucre, which he filled to lucre, and took bribes and perverted judgment. So the leadership was bad. I get that. But there's a problem. Then all the elders of Israel gathered themselves together and came to Samuel at Ramah, and said unto him, Behold, thou art old, and thy sons walk not after thy ways. Now make us a king to judge us, like all the nations. So Israel is stating here, did not has a pope. The judge didn't rule as a pope. He's just a minister, a lowly minister. And the the people didn't have a king, but the other nations had a king. So when I say to you that this concept of America is not 100% new, it is right historically, but America made it become invoked in the world, and it catched on that you could have people in leadership serving the people, the general population, and you could have a church where the minister is just here to teach the truth and to bless the people. That has changed in the church, or church has become now. I know. Next week, anyhow, by God's grace. So notice here, but the thing displeased Samuel when they said, Give us a king to judge us. And Samuel prayed unto God, and the Lord said unto Samuel, Hearken unto the voice of the people, and all that they say unto thee, for they have not rejected thee, but they have rejected me, that I should not reign over them, because Lord was reigning over them through the preacher, so to speak, the prophet. I'll skip on a little bit here. So God said to Samuel, Howbeit, protest unto them, because we're Protestant. That's all I'm doing here. I'm protesting. We're moving in the wrong direction to have a pope running our church. Howbeit, yet protest solemnly unto them, and show them the manner of the king that shall reign over them. And Samuel told all the words of the Lord unto the people that asked of him a king. He said unto them, This will be the manner of the king that shall reign over you. He shall take your sons and appoint them unto himself for his chariots and for his horsemen, and he shall and some shall run before his chariot. Now, every time I see the security detail of presidents running outside of the chariot, and you can see this most vividly with the North Korean leader, King Jong-un, I think his name is, and he has probably about 10, I think, or 12 guys in black suits running as his chariot, his limousine drives. I find that very strange, because my question to you, he always remind me of this text. How, if somebody starts shooting at his limousine, what is the body of men, young men that look buff, look very nice, these beautiful young men running next to his chariot? What is that going to do? Have you figured that out? It's very strange. You talk about this as Satan, because how on earth he's all the way over there, and he figure out that says, well, we don't have chariots anymore, but we still need young men, the best young men. Grab them and tell them, this will run beside my. If somebody put a bomb and try to blow him up, how is men bodies gonna protect him? I never get that. Do you get it? Why did they run next to it? I know, probably to stop and open the door, or probably if somebody starts shooting, they can shoot back. I get that, but I still don't understand. Why not just drive beside it, or use a quad or a bike or something? But have you ever, if you have time, look at the Kenyan president, how he comes into town. He's fascinating. Country's broke as ever, but he has about 12 bikes driving next to him. What a show for a poor country. It's crazy. But that's what the Lord says the kings do. And more people, I guess, they want to have kings. They don't want to have presidents that serve them. So notice here, I'm on the time. So you have horsemen run before your chariots, and he will appoint captains over thousands and captains over 50. And he will set them to air his ground and to reap his harvest and to make his instruments of war. That's why we are about so much war, and instruments of chariots. So I'll leave it there and pick up some things again next week. So notice here, it's not about the people anymore. It's about the president. Is what the president wanted, what the leader want. So in American forming, they broke from this concept where you have all this heap of money being spent on the president and his concubines and his glory, and everything is about the president and what war he want to fight. To now we're supposed to go to a God country that we want, we have a leader, but the leader is not a king. We've been slowly moving away from that, and we're moving back to this kingly authority in the church and in the government. More on that next week. Let us pray. Our Father, who art in heaven, I thank you for your word and the deliverance and the light that you bring to us, that we might live and not die, that we might have our eyes open, that we might see. May you bless us towards this end, and may you bless us as we walk humbly before thee. This is my prayer in Jesus' name, amen. Well, thanks for being with me here on Revive Reform Radio. Looking forward to talking to you again live Monday, when we should talk about motivation. Until then, I pray that you may continue to walk with the King.